I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chairwaves. My guest today is Heatherann Antonacci. Did I say that correctly, by the way?
You said it perfect, Eric. Thank you.
Man. Oh man, I'm on a roll. We're only 10 seconds into this thing, and I already feel like I did the thing. Awesome. So Heather is the chair of 4 groups, 2 CE groups, a key group, and a trusted advisor group in the Sunshine State in Orlando, Florida. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Well, awesome. I'm glad that we get to do this. So you've got a and I talked to enough Vistage chairs that I kind of see patterns in where Vistage chairs come from, and yours is one of the rarer ones that I've seen that you came from academia.
I did. The administrative side, but yes, 16 years in academia.
I would love to hear about how you ended up there and what your journey was in that space.
Sure. Yeah. So I ended up there kind of unintentionally. Back in 2003, I applied for what I thought was a sales manager position. Ended up being sales, but ended up being sales in the form of student recruitment and enrollment for a private university. So basically running the recruitment team. So I ended up there by chance, fell in love with it, worked with 2 different private universities in terms of student recruitment and the admissions team, and then loved the industry so much that I just really wanted to find out about all the facets of how that worked, and ended up moving to Florida. So that was in Buffalo. Ended up moving to Florida in 2006, and then shortly after that started working as the president of a Florida campus here for a private healthcare university. And did that for the next 12 years until I made the change to Vistage. So yeah, it was a great opportunity. Learned a ton. Got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly about our education system, which was good. It was a learning experience. So truly enjoyed it, though.
The recruitment and admissions process is the subject of a lot of tension for a lot of kids and families, and it's stressful. My son is going to be starting in college next year. What advice, as somebody who was in that from the inside, what advice do you give to parents and kids that are going through that?
I think one of the opportunities that I see more now than I used to when I started in that career is the opportunity to work with a consultant, and I use that term loosely, but to work with a consultant or a guide, especially if it's the first child that you're putting through college, or you really want some more education on that. I think it changes a lot. There's a lot of administrative behind the decision, and what school you choose. So I think there's a lot of obvious things, right? Like look for graduate placement rates and of course tuition and all of that. But I really think it's worth the investment for parents to have a consultant or a guide of some sort that can help guide them through the process. I mean, just the financial piece of it alone, and it varies by state, of course.
Oh, yeah.
It can be pretty complex to navigate through, knowing what's available and knowing how to utilize a lot of those resources. Scholarships, I mean, I could talk to you forever, about the process and scholarships. There's a lot of scholarship money out there that's available that I just think unintentionally or intentionally, the language around it is a little foreign. And having an expert who really knows how to navigate through that, I think is certainly worth the time and money invested in it.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of fear in there too for a lot of folks, and I would say that the college admissions process is not really, it's not like anything else that you do in your life. It's not like a job interview. It's not like it's not like high school or
Right.
any of that. It's its own thing, and it's totally unique and something that people are only going to go through once, or if you do post grad, maybe
Yeah.
twice. It's a wild thing.
Yeah.
What's something that people don't know about that process that you would say, if somebody ever asked you, hey, what's the number one thing that people don't fundamentally understand about college admissions? How would you answer that as being somebody that worked in the industry for so long?
Yeah, I would say two things kind of stand out to me. I would say the complexity of the financial aid process. Again, understanding, what resources are there. I think that is a tremendous, I won't say burden, but a tremendous decision to put on, especially a high school grad, right? I
Oh
think as
yeah,
adult learners, I worked with a lot of adult learners, so single parents, career changers. So they had a little bit of a better understanding, but it's still pretty foreign, especially if you haven't done it. So I would say definitely the financial aid piece of it and the financial process in general. And then I think there has been a lot of focus and well deserved on graduate placement. This is a long-term investment. It's a monetary investment, it's a time investment, and I think really, really understanding what the graduate placement process is for the school you're looking at, and what are the outcomes that they've had, and really being able to dive into that and look and make sure that the return that you're going to get is the return that you're looking for.
right. When you came and then you took on a different role, as you said, being then the president, the head honcho at a private school in private university in Florida. What was what was the biggest challenge for you walking into that role versus the experiences you'd had previously in recruiting and admissions?
So yeah, the transition from running the admission student recruitment kind of department to actually being the president, of the Florida campus, it was a transition that allowed me the opportunity to really grow. I mean, I grew tremendously as a leader. Again, because instead of being responsible for one aspect of the process, I had that vision and oversight for the whole process, all the way through to graduation. Um, it gave me the opportunity to build a team around me uh, that could help a student from the day they walked in and applied to the day they graduated and where they ended up working. So the transition in itself was just a much broader scope of vision and responsibility, but
Yeah.
also, much more rewarding in that as well,
It,
watching it from
and
start to finish.
as you mentioned, you were in academia, but you were not an academic, and now you're in this position where you're in charge of all of that. How did you navigate that piece of it, and was it difficult to, were there people that were reluctant to accept you as a leader because you didn't have that experience, or was that a concern for you?
I didn't have a concern about it, and I think there was maybe some reluctancy. I will say I had a great team around me, so I didn't feel a lot of that. But of course, you come into something new and you have one slice of expertise, and now you're working with individuals and others. So I came in very curious. So I really, really leaned on the leaders in the other departments to help me grow as a leader, to be able to help them, and kind of took that all in again with a heightened sense of curiosity, where if I'm responsible for the business, I don't have to know how to do everything, but I do have to understand how it all works together. and how we can make, honestly, college experience and just going through that can be pretty challenging. So just
Sure.
understanding how we made it the smoothest and best experience for the student, again, from when they come in and get ready to enroll to when they graduate and go out there in the workforce. But I relied heavily on the team that I had around me, and then the team that I brought together to kind of strengthen that whole journey.
I imagine that's something that experience is something that you end up talking a lot to your Vistage members about, being that a good number of business founders and executives sort of feel like they have that burden of being the expert on everything,
Absolutely.
and obviously no one can be.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And we have a lot of conversations, talking about, it's the team that you surround yourself with, and the importance of, the collaboration and just, I call it, diversity of genius, diversity of brilliance, but that's really aiming for that as a leader and getting people aligned, certainly, but leaning on them. You're right. A lot of CEOs and business owners and just business leaders in general, they're so used to being the go-to person, the person who has all the answers, that it can be a little challenging to say, okay, is it better for me to be the go-to person, or is it a better model to surround myself with a team of leaders who can collaborate with each other, but you have several go-to people, not just one. And that allows for growth all the way around, I think.
So how did you first hear about Vistage? Had you ever been part of a business peer group before? What set you on that path to then become a Vistage chair?
Yeah, so great question. The university that I was with, the chairman had actually been a member in a Vistage group in another state outside of Florida. And I was curious about Vistage. I started seeing some things about Vistage, Florida, and I was curious to learn more about it. And when I asked her, what was your experience like? She had positive things to say. And fortunately, she encouraged me to find out more and see if it was the right fit for me. So I joined a local Vistage group. It was, I tell people I drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, everything about it was what I needed at that time to, grow personally, and professionally as a leader. So I had the drug, right? I drank the Kool-Aid. It was great. And I was a member in a group for about 3.5 years.
Okay.
And then some financial things came along, and we had to start cutting some expenses, and unfortunately, that was one of the expenses that was cut from the budget. I followed Vistage still after the years, and I stayed connected with my Vistage group chair. And then when I made the decision to kind of take my career on a different path, I reconnected with that Vistage chair. And, I will say he asked me a great question. He said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, but I have a laundry list of what I don't want to do. And I need to find something that aligns with that." And he said, "Well, have you ever considered being a chair in Vistage? We could certainly use someone like you in Central Florida." And I said, "No, but that is like a dream job. So, tell me more, tell me more." And the journey kind of took off from there. And that was about 6.5 years ago. And it's been a great ride. I mean, I'm enjoying the heck out of every day.
What was your experience like then going through Chair Academy and building your first group? What was that like for you?
So, Chair Academy was a little bit different. I went through it here in Florida, as opposed to, some chairs have gone through it, traveled out of state for it. So it was an experience. My mentor chair and the CEO of Vistage Florida at the time were really the ones who took me through that journey. I will say that building my group, I don't want to say it's the hardest thing I ever did, because it's not hard, but it required a lot of tenacity. It required, full commitment. Like, hey, if you're in this, you're in this. What was really rewarding was every time I talked to someone, it was a different conversation. And I was fascinated by these people, these business leaders that I got to talk to and hear their story and hear what their challenges were and kind of what their journey had been. So that really just kind of solidified it for me that this is where I'm supposed to be. But it was a journey. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. It took a lot of commitment and a lot of tenacity, but so worth it. And that experience alone, I think, helped me grow.
There have been quite a few people, even on this podcast, who have said that it was building their first group was the hardest thing that they'd ever done, professionally or personally, in any part of their lives. So it is challenging. I'm curious if there were any overlaps or commonalities between recruiting Vistage members and recruiting college students back in your first career.
There were, because, I say it's a sales job for lack of a better term, right? But there's a difference between selling something that you can touch and feel and get close to and selling a dream, right? Or selling something that's intangible. And, working with, college students, again, it's not something they can touch and feel. It's getting them to envision what life can be like, right? Should they put in the work and go on this journey? And I think working with Vistage members is parallel to that. Like I can't give, a potential Vistage member something to touch and feel. It's talking about what does it look like right now and what could it look like, and what are you willing to do to get there? So there's some parallels there for sure.
What And of course, there's the other thing where when you get somebody for a Vistage group, it's not just about selling them on the group, and just like getting a kid placed in a college is not all about, they also, so they have to be good fits for each other.
Absolutely.
The kid has to be good for the school that's admitting him or her, and the Vistage member has to be really, really good for that group. How do you vet your potential new members, and how do you sit across the table from somebody and say, wow, okay, you're going to be a great addition to this group?
Yeah, it's conversation for sure, right? It's curiosity. I mean, one of the things that's really important to me is working with individuals who really see the value in self-work. And, what do I mean by that, right? I mean, it could be, overall, it's how do you create a better version of yourself? How do you work on yourself? And how valuable is that self-work to you in your life? And that, for some people, that's their faith. For some people, it's going to the gym 6 days a week. For some people, it's continuing to educate themselves. But there's this connection that I have, and that I try and find members who really value the self-work that they're doing, in their life. And they want to use that self-work. And as they, kind of make that better version of themselves, that then has that ripple effect, right? They become better leaders to their people. They become better spouses, better friends, and all of that. But there really has to be that understanding of the value of self-work. And that requires me to have different conversations, to your point. It's not just about how big is your business, what type of industry are you in? It's how do you lead? How do you grow? Are you more concerned with the success of your people than you are of your own individual success? So it's really getting into those conversations about how they live their life. In addition to, of course, tell me about your business, but there's so much more to a Vistage member. I often say, the business owner doesn't walk into the Vistage group meeting every month. The human being walks in to the Vistage group meeting every month. And you can't separate the two. So it needs to be the whole person.
You wrote something that I found really, really striking in some of the stuff that we were communicating on before you came on here. You said, I've come to believe that we are all born with a spirit inside of us that ignites our resilience in times of adversity, This isn't about religion or the universe. It's about the ability to tap into that spirit when we need it the most.
Yes.
Tell me about that and what that means to you and how it contributes to your role as a Vistage chair.
Okay. So, yeah, I truly believe that. That's one of my strongest beliefs. And I think for me, at a very young age, I was able to tap into that, what I call the spirit. And that's resilience. Fortunately, I was granted the ability to be able to, when times were tough, dive into that internal spirit, that internal resilience, and navigate my way through those challenging times. And that's not unique to me. I believe that we all are gifted with that spirit, what I refer to as spirit. I think that there are people who struggle a lot of times to identify with it and use it to help them navigate through difficult times. But I find that the people I'm drawn to and those that are drawn to me are those individuals that have been able to draw from that spirit when they need that kind of that strength, that additional perspective to navigate through something. I mean, life's going to throw tough stuff at all of us, right? But drawing on that spirit to say, yeah, this is tough, this is challenging, but I can navigate my way through this and come out a
Yeah.
better person on the other side.
You are involved with, and you have been involved with over your career, and Vistage chairs. They don't show up on the second Tuesday or whatever it is, and then you've got a whole life, and one of the things that's really important to you is being a part of your community and supporting organizations in your community. Can you just spend a minute and talk about a couple of the organizations that you work with that have been the most meaningful to you?
Sure. One that always comes up in conversation is I spent a few years working with an organization called Girls on the Run. And this was an after-school youth program that took girls in 3rd through 8th grade, kind of broken into different groups based on their age level, and spent some time with them. We spent 2 hours, and the first hour would be on life lessons. I'm working with 3rd graders and talking to them about kindness and, bullying and just all of that. Like what lessons do we want to teach, young girls in the 3rd grade? And then we'd work in a physical piece of it too. So we'd get to run around the track with these, 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and help them understand the balance between physical, mental, and emotional health. And then we would kind of bring the whole season together and run this huge 5K with these young girls. And it was a very rewarding experience because these girls are going to grow up very confident in their ability, again, able to navigate through tough times and really with a sound. I think we complement with the value system that their parents inherently give them, but we add to that and help them learn how to navigate through, societal challenges. It's tough. It's tough being a kid. It's tough being a teenager. And if you have to be able to
Absolutely.
get through that before you can tackle being an adult. So that was a very rewarding experience for me.
That's amazing. Heatherann, so wonderful having you as a guest. If folks have questions about your various groups, if people want to learn more about what you do in the community or how they can get their kid into college if they don't have, like that William H. Macy kind of money, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is message me on my LinkedIn profile. I am right there, Heatherann Antonacci. Or, someone can reach out to me via email. They can call me, but definitely pull up. I would say if someone says, I want to know more about this Heatherann Antonacci, check out my LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of information there and definitely my contact information.
We will link to that from the show notes. Thank you so much for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, And to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.